Jeffries, the GME share issuer, no longer supports shorts on the stocks, means no more synthetic shorts. No, there's other lenders. They're just one of many. It's interesting. I mean, the Jeffries thing is interesting, but there's so many lenders, it's completely irrelevant. Shows a preview of your beauty channel tips. I need to block out time on my schedule to pay attention. I'll let you guys know. Man, a lot of questions about Jeffries. Okay, so the thing with Jeffries is they're not the only lender. But it's interesting, right? So back when I created, oh man, someone might have to actually do some digging in my DD for a link to this because I don't even know where it is. But it's in one of my weeklies from a while back. But essentially, I described why the borrow rate is 1%, right? There's a reason for it. So basically, the borrow rate is at 1% because the lenders want to incentivize borrowing. Because for all the shares the short hedge funds borrow, so the short hedge funds are trapped in a position, right? But the only people that can actually have knowledge of this are the people who lend them the shares. Like, these are the only people that know what their position is and what they have or haven't covered, right? And since these are the financial markets and someone's always looking to take advantage of someone else, it's really easy to see why they would want a 1% borrow rate, right? Because, like, the short hedge funds can't do anything but continue to borrow GameStop, right? So if the lenders can incentivize that borrowing, by using cash collateral and rebates, I go pretty in depth into this on the DD, but I'll try to do it short. Cash collateral rebates, which means essentially the short hedge funds give the lenders collateral, and the lenders give the short hedge funds whatever shares they want, right? And so this goes on and on and on, and they keep the rate low because the rebate rate is like 0.98% on average. And so, like, essentially they are allowing them to borrow for free, right? So they get to borrow GME shares for free at the cost of cash collateral. Now, here's the fun thing. If they have to cover and they get liquidated, the lender gets a default on those loans. So the lender walks away with all that collateral and they get their shares back. Because it's not the lender's responsibility to cover the debt, right? It's the short hedge funds and the DTCC. So essentially, the lenders are doing to the short hedge funds what the short hedge funds are attempting to do to GME, which is bankrupt it. They're giving them the rope by which to hang themselves. The purpose of the lenders is to lend shares. Why discontinue lending? So the moment the lenders stop, now Jeffries is just the first, right? But once they stop, then short hedge funds can't short, right? So the lenders get to force the liquidation. Because the short hedge funds can't continue to drive the price down, which in turn causes the price to go up, which causes margin calls. And then that leads to liquidation. And then the lenders get to walk away with their collateral and they get all their shares back. And the lenders don't care, right? Because they're lending fake shares. Essentially, they don't think that there's any risk. Well, there is no risk, right? For them. Because they know that the shorts are trapped. So the shorts have to keep borrowing and coming up with more and more cash to keep borrowing to get more and more synthetic shorts, right? So there is no risk to the lender because the shares they're creating aren't real. And in the event of, a default of the loan, they're just returned the real shares that they lent out. Covering of the synthetic shares is not their responsibility. If the lender stopped, wouldn't they not receive the collateral because they have stopped? No. They already collected the collateral. The shorts, to get their collateral back, the shorts have to return the borrowed shares. Silicon, if the lender is lending for cheap to allow them to hang themselves, and then they stop, the noose just tightens, right? Because then, so the shorts can no longer, they no longer have access to this like unlimited pool of short shares, right? Which prevents them from suppressing the price. Which means the price is going to go up. The lenders know this. So if the lenders cut off the flow, right, then the short hedge funds are kind of just like left out at sea. Because they no longer have the shares to suppress the price with. The price is going to go up. That's going to trigger margin calls and then trigger liquidation. So the lenders, the incentive for the lenders to not just bend them over on the borrow, right, is that the lenders get to collect collateral. So essentially the lenders get to collect all of the short hedge funds' cash and assets, bonds, cash and same as cash assets. And the short hedge funds get shares, right? But when this is all over, they just walk away with all the assets. Which means they don't have to try to buy all of that. Like, so when the short hedge funds are liquidated, there's going to be nothing there for other funds to like buy up, right? So generally when a fund goes under, its assets get cannibalized by other funds. But in this instance, like the lenders are just going to walk away with all of the cash collateral that belonged to that short hedge fund. Well, so for those borrow contracts, there's still an expiration, right? So say they've collected all the collateral there is to collect from the short hedge fund. They cut off lending, and then they just sit and wait for the hedge fund to be forced. Like, they're the lender, right? They can margin call the hedge fund. You understand that, right? They're the margin caller. They are Aunt Marge. So by cutting off the lending, they essentially put the burden of all that margin onto the hedge fund immediately. And then the hedge fund has like X amount of time to cover the positions they already have. And now they can't short anymore, so the price is going up, and they have to cover those positions. Yeah, I think so, Walden. I think the lenders are just going to keep doing this until they've collected all the collateral there is to collect, and then I think that they're going to cut them off and let them starve. Because they know the other party's trapped, right? That's the only way this works, is they're the only people with knowledge, like actual data on short positions, right? And they're behaving in a manner that indicates that those short positions are massive. But they're the only ones in the whole world, including the SEC, that know the actual truth of those positions. Why? Because they lent them the shares. And they haven't gotten them back. So they're incentivized to get as much collateral as they can and then just collapse the fund at the end of the loan. right? It's like predatory lending all over again. It's like back in 2008, you'd go to a bank, you'd be like, I have a credit score of like 350, and they'd be like, oh, well, what $1.2 million home do you want to buy? And people would be like, oh, that one. I'd be like, here you go. Because they didn't give a shit, right? Because they were going to sell those collateralized debt obligations off to other banks as toxic assets, and they were just going to collect the house. So they were going to collect the collateral, so they didn't give a shit what they lent you, right? Because they were going to walk away with the real property. And this is the exact same thing, but with a different, like with a different financial instrument, right? Jeffries isn't the only lender. They're just one. So one lender, like there's always going to be a first, right? One lender has now said no more. That doesn't mean other lenders have said no more. Just one. There's all kinds of other lenders. Citadel's a lender. BlackRock could be a lender. I mean, there's so many other lenders. Jeffries isn't like the only lender. Why not raise interest? Because that doesn't incentivize, because then another lender, right? So if one lender is like, okay, I'm going to charge these guys 50% because they have to borrow from me, right? They'll just go to a different lender. So if they all charge 1%, then they all profit equally, right? Equal profits. You don't want to be this guy when everyone else is working together. That's like saying, you know, I only have one grocery store. Well, actually, if you live in a place where you only have like one grocery store near you, right? They can charge you whatever they want. But if you have 10 grocery stores within like a 50-mile radius, they have to compete with each other. I don't know who's going to stop the short lending next. Someone. You'll hear an announcement. More and more will follow suit now that one has. The incentive to stop lending, Falco, is that the short hedge funds have no more collateral left. Once they've bled them dry, then they just cut them off, right?